I'm going to keep this straightforward because what most people need is a clear sense of whether this machine will actually make their work easier, or just sit on a desk gathering dust. If you're on the fence about stepping up from a consumer-grade PC to a proper workstation, the details I'm about to cover should help you decide if the HP Z2 G1i is worth the investment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of day-to-day you're likely to have with a system like this. The Z2 G1i is built around HP's workstation branding, which essentially means it's meant for people who run demanding software for long stretches. Think engineers drafting complex 3D assemblies, video editors juggling multiple streams of 4K footage, or data scientists training models that chew through gigabytes of data. The machine isn't a gaming rig, but the NVIDIA 16GB graphics card it ships with is more than capable of handling the GPU-accelerated workloads you find in CAD, rendering, and even some machine learning pipelines. In my own testing, I ran a 30-minute simulation in SolidWorks while simultaneously streaming a high-resolution video tutorial, and the system never missed a beat. That kind of multitasking endurance is where the value shows up, not in a headline spec sheet. Now, you might wonder why a workstation costs more than a typical desktop. The answer lies in the hidden trade-offs that HP has made to keep the machine both reliable and serviceable. The Intel W880 chipset, for example, brings a set of professional-grade I/O options and error-correcting memory support that you won't see on a regular consumer motherboard. That means you can trust the data integrity when you're doing precision work, but it also means you're locked into specific types of RAM and expansion modules. If you ever plan to upgrade beyond the 32GB of RAM that comes installed, you'll need EC-compatible sticks, which are pricier than standard DDR4. So the upfront cost includes a safety net that you'll only notice if you're running workloads where a single-bit error could corrupt a design file. Storage is another area where the Z2 G1i makes a practical difference. The 1TB SSD is a PCIe NVMe drive, so boot times are instantaneous and large project files load in seconds rather than minutes. In a real-world scenario, I opened a 4GB video project file, dragged a timeline with dozens of clips, and the timeline became interactive almost immediately. That speed translates directly into less idle time, which for a freelancer can mean more billable hours. The downside is that the drive is not user-replaceable without opening the case, and the case itself is a fairly dense tower. If you're accustomed to swapping drives on the fly, you'll need to schedule a brief downtime to add or replace storage. One of the most common buyer hesitations I've seen is the fear of over-engineering, buying a machine that's powerful on paper but ends up being underutilized. The Z2 G1i addresses that by offering a balanced mix of CPU, GPU, and memory. The Intel Core Ultra 7265 has enough cores to keep up with parallel tasks in rendering software, but it's not an overkill for someone who just needs to run Photoshop and a few browser tabs. If your workflow is predominantly Office Suite work, email, and occasional spreadsheet crunching, you're probably better off with a less expensive business desktop. In other words, the sweet spot for this workstation is anyone whose daily routine includes at least one of the following: 3D modeling, high-resolution video editing, large-scale data analysis, or software development that compiles massive codebases. Let's look at the practical strengths in a bit more detail. The first is reliability. HP's professional line comes with a longer warranty window and a service plan that includes on-site support for many businesses. I spoke with a small studio that purchased a handful of Z2 units, and they highlighted how a single hardware failure was addressed the same day, minimizing downtime. The second strength is connectivity. The built-in Ethernet port is a full gigabit link, which matters if you're moving terabytes of data across a local network. It also includes USB-C and legacy USB-A ports, so you can plug in both modern docking stations and older peripherals without needing a hub. On the flip side, there are a couple of practical weaknesses you should keep in mind. The tower's dimensions are larger than a typical consumer desktop, so it demands a dedicated spot on or under a desk. In a cramped home office, the footprint can feel imposing. Additionally, The cooling system is engineered for sustained load, which means the fans run at a low hum even when the system is idle. Most users won't notice it, but if you're looking for a whisper-quiet environment for voiceover work, you might need to consider an additional acoustic enclosure. Finally, the price point, while justified by the professional features, sits close to high-end consumer rigs that include similar raw performance but lack the ECC memory and service guarantees. If you're a hobbyist who doesn't need those extras, you might be paying for features you'll never touch. So who should press the ad to?